Hello, everybody. Kelsey Komorowski here, founder of Como. Welcome to today's interview with Jen Farrington. Jen is dialing in from her lunch hour from work. So Jen, thank you for taking the time to share your story with us. Jen has an incredible story with her son, Cam, who is currently in college. As usual, Jen, I'm just going to flip this right over to you. If you can share a bit of background about Cam in school, through high school into college, kind of give us the lay of the land about his situation with school and learning.
Sure. Cameron is a high energy kid. He had, I would say, not necessarily an easy way through middle and high school, but he didn't put a lot of effort in and still had relatively good grades. So we never really paid attention to his study habits per se, because the grades were always okay. You know, by okay, I mean usually I'll say like a B average, A, Bs, sometimes C's, but for the most part, fine. But he was one of those kids that it was almost in spite of his efforts, he was able to get those grades because homework was always crumpled in the bottom of the backpack. He was always turning in things late, forgot about things. But when it came to actual study time, there wasn't really a lot of dedication to that. He could get through the tests relatively easy. And so he was able to get into some great schools for college because of his overall grades. But what we didn't realize along the way was his study habits were not very good. And there wasn't really a good sense of accountability. He had terrible time management skills. And he just didn't have an attitude where he loved school. I wouldn't say that he didn't like learning. Like, he was one of those kids that if it was something that he enjoyed doing, like, he's very much an outdoorsman. So if there was something he could learn about fishing or hunting or boating or things like that, he could be all in. But when it came to math and science, while he loved it, he was, his science teachers were science kid of the year, but he really had no foundation of good study habits. So when he got to college, it became apparent. It was very clear that he did not have the foundation to really succeed there. And, we could kind of fake it in the beginning. And then we realized this was going down a path that was he was not going to succeed. And it wasn't because he wasn't smart enough, because I feel like everybody's smart enough. They just have different ways of learning and different ways of approaching things. And my efforts as a parent were not enough. So in other words, it wasn't just enough for me to tell him, do these things, because it was coming from mom. And it was kind of like, Mom, you just don't understand. Or I wasn't there. He was at college. So in high school, I could at least be like, hey, your teacher told me you didn't get that homework in. Where's that homework? And it was me doing it. And then, Kelsey, you said something in one of our early meetings that I think just kind of nailed it on what it was. It was like, we want everybody, we love our kids. We want them to succeed, but we have really two extremes on how we approach it. One is that helicopter parenting, where it's just like, I'll do it. I'll get it for you. Well, I'll make sure it's done. Or we go to the other extreme and it's like, you're old enough now, you should be able to just do it. And we let them go. But there's no tools underneath that to teach them. There was no middle ground there. It was either I'm doing it or I'm leaving you up to your own devices. But nowhere in between there did we teach you what I know as an adult, or what I learned through this. And both ways are setting you up to fail. And that's kind of where I realized he needed something more than what I could give him.
Totally. Wow, Jen. That's so, you just articulated that's so beautifully. Thank you for that. You mentioned a few things I really want to highlight because I think they're so important. And at this point, anybody who's watched a few of these interviews right now, and Jen, I think there's something in the water with the last few months, but I swear so many of our kids have had a similar profile in terms of that grades were good. And if grades are good, why would there be a red flag? They're getting A's and B's, maybe the odd C, but overall, it's just it's so apparent that for the most part, if the grades are at a certain level, there is the assumption that everything is going as it should be.
Yeah.
And we just as you just pointed out with even that little bit of Cam's story, And at this stage, anybody who's been with me for a little bit, like I always say, I'm like, easy A's are the devil. Like that is a red flag. Like if they are getting A's without effort, you should be very concerned because they're not doing it skillfully. If it's easy, they're not going to learn how to persevere and get resourceful. They're just going to think they're dumb when they don't get it. Or
Absolutely.
like, or just have this big gap. So that's just number one, the easy A's. Do you think so? Because you mentioned that you weren't really concerned in light of the grades were good. Did Cam ever, just out of curiosity, did Cam ever voice any concern, or was he kind of just like, was he happy being like, my grades are fine, like this is fine?
He was
Like
totally
throughout high
just
school.
like, yeah, through high, he didn't care. He was just like, this is great. He saw no impact on the future. And he was kind of like, what are you worried about? Like, the grades are good, mom. Stop worrying, you know. And to be honest, I didn't worry either. I worried that, you know, geez, you know, you don't sit at a desk to do homework. Your paperwork's all crumpled. You're not turning in homework. I worried that, but I kind of was skating through too because I've got 3 kids, and it was like I got a lot going on. I'm a working mom. I've got 3 kids. If you're kind of getting the grades, I'm not going to worry too much about it, you know. And so I don't think that either of us were overly. And then when he got into good schools, I was like, all right, check, you're done. You know, that's
Job is
it.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, until college grades started coming in, and then academic probation started coming in. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, this is maybe not everything we thought it was. And that was the real eye opener for both of us, I think, at that time.
Right. So let's talk about that. And it's so, it's so true without any evidence or frame of reference for how or why there would be a problem, like you don't know what you don't know is essentially the thing here, right? And depending, and actually, Jen, this is important too. Can you share what Cam is studying in college? What school is he? If you actually don't need to share the school, anonymity, I can't talk, is a thing.
Yeah.
But what is he studying?
So he's studying mechanical engineering. So it is a challenging, you know, like his coursework is like multivariate calculus, physics, and, you know, they're hard courses. And it's a very structured, disciplined kind of major. So, you know, if you don't pass certain tests and certain things, you don't get to move on. So it's not just about getting in. Yeah, you have to, in order to take the next class, you have to get at least a B in this course or something like that. You know, so it is, they're hard courses and they're rigorous on how they grade them. So, yeah, but that being said, I have my 2 daughters, and my one daughter's in college as well, and she's in screenwriting, so not what you would call it a similar. And I have already said, sign up for Como. Like I have already got my other 2 kids doing it as well, because I saw the benefit of, I think this works not just for very hard majors, but just like I said to Cam, you know, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but one of the most valuable thing I think that we got out of this, you know, was the ability to not just get through college, but to change that mindset and the resourcefulness and the time management and that, you know, executive functioning, all of those things that they work on is not just going to help him in college, but is going to help him throughout his career. And I feel like this generation lacks that. And, you know, they're going to go into a job and they're going to be like, what do you mean you don't know how to organize your time? You can't prioritize these things. You can't make sure this gets done. So that's why I wanted my daughter to do it, even though she's, you know, doing very well through her classes. It's just it's a thought process, a mindset that really just is going to build you for success in so much more than just school, which is really what I'm hoping they get out of it.
That's so awesome, Jen. It's so true. Like we talk about skills for learning and life success, and I understand that's a bit buzzwordy maybe, or it's just like, well, what does that actually mean? But what you just said is literally it. Like schoolwork is one thing. Yes, get the skills to learn and succeed in your chosen classes, whatever that is. You want to feel confident and smart and get the grades you need. But also, like, school is going to end. You are going to be in the real world. You're not going to be judged on your ability to succeed in biomedical, whatever, or engineering or screenwriting. Like you're going to be judged on your ability to succeed. Are you resourceful? Can you think on your own 2 feet? Can you be efficient? Can you prioritize and like all of these different things, which schoolwork is just obviously practice for. So that's awesome. I think that's such a great insight. Let's talk about Cam's transition to college, unpack a bit of how this came about. You mentioned it was okay at first. So, because from what you said, Cam goes into college. both of you are like, amazing. He's got good grades. He's into these schools, like he's off. So what happened, I guess, the first couple of months, like when did that start to crack a little bit?
I think the novelty of college, right? And living in a dorm and he was in Boston, so he's in the city, there's all that kind of new thing happening. He's meeting new friends and he's kind of getting to know like what the class work's going to be like. And so the early months are kind of, I don't want to say easy, but it's not really held accountable for a lot of stuff because they realize there's all this dynamic of the social part of college and all that kind of going on. So he doesn't really see the impact until, midterm grades come out, and that's halfway through. And then all of a sudden the grades aren't quite what they thought. And he's, realizing in his mind, he's like, I can catch up, right? I don't need to put a lot of effort in the beginning because it's, I just need to buckle down at the end and I'll catch up. Well, it's college. So a lot of the stuff wasn't accepted, right? They weren't going to let you do it. And then this is a little bit harder, so all of a sudden the content's harder and it's not so easy to just cram 2 days before the test and there's just too much material. And so then all of a sudden at the end, he realized, oh, my old habits where I used to just, maybe study for 5 hours or even 3 hours was enough for me to do it. That's not enough. And I haven't been doing the homework along the way, which now all of a sudden I don't understand these things that are building, on the previous content. And that practice of just cramming before a test didn't cut it anymore. And that was when it was the eye opener. Oh, geez, this is maybe not going to work. And then he said to himself, okay, so at the end of the first year, he does okay, but not great. And he says, oh, Mom, I realized what I did wrong. I just left it till the end. I blew it off. And then I tried to just focus. That didn't work. I'm going to do better this next year. Right. And it was like, okay, here we go. And then sure enough, old habits, because again, they're independent now. He's in college, so he has parties distracting him. He has, activities to do. And all of a sudden, while he didn't mean to, it's just the way he's always been. So those habits just crept back up again. And here he is calling me 3/4 of the way and says, I haven't been attending classes. I didn't, I figured it was so easy. I didn't need to go. And then boom, he's at the same spot again the next year. And that's when academic probation kicked in.
Yikes. So this is so interesting. So the initial slide, he saw it happen. You guys saw it happen the first term. Second term, was it more was the whole first year more or less of that same pattern-ish of just kind of using those old behaviors,
Yes.
cramming, et cetera? Okay. Out of curiosity, Jen, because I know everybody's different. I speak with some parents and some kids who are like, I lied to my mom and didn't tell her for months. And others are like, she was my first phone call when I got my first F. Was Cam forthcoming with you? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I have access to his grades. So I can see, it's like we have a portal, but I can only see midterm grades and final grades. So I cannot see what homework's getting turned in. I can't see if he's attending classes. So the conversation was, we saw it at midterm, but not because Cam was super forthcoming to be like, hey, Mom. No, he was trying to be like, I'll fix this before Mom knows. That was the mentality for sure.
That I feel like that is like I feel like that's like a top 5 theme that we see. I'll fix it before she knows. Okay. Yeah. So that was first year. So in second year, by the time you guys realized, okay, we're repeating here, we're recycling this. Was it like, what was Cam's reaction? Like, did he kind of hit a low point? Was he fed up, or did he still think like, it's okay, I'm going to fix it, I'll come back from this? Like, what was the reaction?
He felt terrible. I mean, he doesn't express it always like as clear as, but you could tell he was just like, this isn't where I want to be. And this is, nobody wants to fail. I don't think anybody feels good about that, and I think he was, there's all kinds of things I think swirling in his head. Is it self-doubt? Is it mad at myself? Is it frustration? And it's everything. But I think it got to the point where it was just like, it's too much it's just not going to get better. And so what can I do? You know what I mean? It was kind of that, because he didn't have the tools to say, hey, here's ways that we can work to get this better. It was a sense of just throwing up the hands and being like, I just can't do it. But it was always somebody else's fault, right? The professor didn't tell us this. I didn't know about this test. And there was no sense of self accountability of, well, you probably didn't know about it because you weren't going to class, but that wasn't the issue. It was the professor wasn't clear about what he wanted, or the grading is a crazy grading system, or there was always a reason on why it just wasn't his fault. And that's when I realized, okay, this isn't just about school. This is about life. Because if you go through life and you're constantly like, it's always somebody else and you don't take accountability, you're not going to succeed anywhere. And that's when I started looking and saying, I need something that is really going to teach him these skills and help him where obviously I'm missing on how to do this.
Mm-hmm. And had you done, yeah, and then leading up to that kind of realization of, all right, we've got to do something different here. Had he tried, or had you guys tried, like, had he gone to the learning center or the writing center or tried tutors? Like, had you guys kind of looked at ways of kind of bridging that gap? What were they, if you can talk a bit about that?
Sure. So there was, talk to your professor, but he was always nervous about talking to his professor. Then there was, hey, they have tutoring session. Well, they don't know what they're talking about and they're restricted on the time. I mean, literally an excuse for everything. So it was, and I had told him when he went to school, I said, Cameron, use your like 9 to 5 at school should be like a job. Go to every class and do your studies between 9 to 5 so that your nights and weekends can be free. Okay. I say that and it just goes in one ear and out the other. Like, Mom, nobody does that. That's ridiculous. But then the way Como kind of teaches it and is like, hey, if you schedule these things and you have your calendar and this is blocked off in time, you'll make sure you don't miss anything. You'll have your nights and weekends free if needed. You'll realize how much time you need for things. Now all of a sudden he listens. Now all of a sudden that was the ability to say, because it was more than me just giving advice like off the cuff. It was about Como was able to say, all right, pretty much saying the same kind of thing, but with the tools to say, let me show you this calendar. Because when I would say, get an agenda book, he'd be like, oh, I just never use it. It sits in my backpack, right? He doesn't. But Como had it where, hey, no, this electronic calendar is going to do it. And for this first month or week or whatever it was, we're going to do this together. I'm going to check your calendar every day or every 3 days or whatever it was. And it kind of forced him to do it so that he could finally say, oh my gosh, this works. Where I wasn't sitting there calling him every day and being like, hey, did you do your agenda today? I saw what this said and you didn't fill this in, or where is this? And he just needed that kind of accountability in the beginning consistently that he didn't get. So then it could branch off that you didn't have to follow up on him all the time. He was doing it on his own. But that was the difference between me just saying, get an agenda book, keep a track, versus Tasha getting in there and being like, Cam, don't forget, you got your differential equations thing, huge difference. And it made all the difference.
Wow, Jen, that's so awesome. That's so well explained. And I think you hit on something so important because you talked before about Cam's like kind of falling back on old patterns, right? And these behaviors that were just like really hard to break. But it's not just for kids, like it's for adults, for everybody. If you don't have something to replace bad habits with, they're like, what are you going to do then? Like, it's really hard to break that without kind of replacing them with something else. And it sounds like that is in large part what happened. So I have a question, because you had mentioned about, first of all, sorry, Dad, good thing that you weren't calling him every day being like, did you do your agenda? I'm just happy for your relationship that was not the case.
Yes.
When you guys first of all, how did you hear about us? I'm always curious to learn that. And second of all, was Cam resistant? Because obviously, and I laugh about this now, but I'm like, this is a program for learning how to learn. It's for school. A lot of kids are just like, no, like not ever am I going to touch this. How did you find this? And what was Cam's initial reaction? Like, how did he?
I come from a research background, so I dug into the research. I just looked everywhere, I mean, online, but I was looking specifically for, help with students outside of just tutoring, right? I needed something more important. And then I just went through all the reviews. I watched things like this that you had with other, parents. And then I saw everywhere that you were referenced, and I kind of watched you had a tutorial. I sat through the tutorial, and I was kind of like, okay, I think this might be something different than what we've, just from me saying things. Was Cameron receptive at first? No, because Cameron felt so overwhelmed, right? He's already failing. He's already feeling like he doesn't have time to catch up on what he's doing. And here I am asking him, hey, can you do one more thing? So his immediate reaction was like, no, absolutely not. Mom, are you kidding me? This is like the last thing I need. I'm this close to a breakdown. Like this is not going to be good. And the way I explained it, and forgive me if this is completely wrong, but this is how I got him on board, is because he likes to build stuff. So I said, imagine you got hired to do a job to build a shed, okay? And you've built 1,000 sheds, and you take the wood and you take nails and you hammer it in, and that's going to take you, 6 hours to build that shed the way that you know it, and you're very comfortable with that, and it's very good to do. I said, but what if, and you have a deadline, you have to get this done by the end of the day. So this is, I've only got 6 hours, I can do this. But what if someone came to you in the morning and said, hey, listen, if you just give me a half hour, I'll show you how a drill and screw will be able to build this shed, and you can do it in 3 hours. Would you take that half hour and just learn how to use a drill and a screw? Or would you say, no, I know the hammer and nail, I'm going to do it my way? And he's like, well, of course, I take the time to learn the drill and screw. And I was like, well, that's what Como is. It's just going to spend a little bit time up front to teach you how to do things quicker, faster, and better. And he was like, all right, I'll try it. And for whatever reason, I mean, I'd say he was probably still a little reluctant going in, but I think when we sat and had the interview and he kind of went over exactly what it was like, I think light bulbs were going off and thinking, hey, maybe this isn't so bad. And he was on academic probation. So it was like, if you don't do something, you're not going back to school. So let's, I think he was kind of like, maybe I should try something.
That, Jen, I'm going to full out appropriate that analogy. I'm going to use it. It's brilliant. I haven't heard that one. I haven't used that one. It's so fantastic. And it's so true. And as far as, because that's, I think, one of the biggest barriers, especially for kids who are really overwhelmed, missing assignments, failing, stakes are high. It's almost like a paralysis shutdown, like starts to encroach, because it's just like, they don't see a way out. But to be like the analogy that we use, and I don't even actually want to share this right now because it's so weak compared to what you just shared, but normally the one that we use is like, because they'll be like, I can't have more on my plate. And we always say like, that's cool because we're giving you a different plate and it's a lot better.
Oh, nice.
But I'm going to use the building one for now. I love that. So okay, cool. So that helped open his mind. He came on board. And I know you spoke a bit to this earlier, just as far as, so I want to hear from what you observed, from what you saw, what really moved the needle for Cam, like what really helped with him. Because again, we talk about learning to learn, we can talk about these different things, but in practice, to change the quality and the cadence of your day-to-day life, you did mention about the life skills, right? That this is not just for school. He's learning stuff that are going to carry him through after. Was there anything else in particular for you, one or two things that you saw made a difference for him?
Absolutely. I mean, and I probably could break this down. And there were 4 things that I noticed. The first was the ability to have an attitude change. So Como does these things called the wins, right? So you start each meeting with something positive and good that happened, that you accomplished. And it doesn't have to be big. It's literally anything that is substantial, that was a positive thing for that day. And I think when you kind of start it that way, everything was positive after that. Even if things weren't working so well, it really just set the tone to say, hey, these little things are accomplishments. Like, just because you were able to attend class where you normally miss class and you were on time, that's worth acknowledging, right? That was a good day today because you did that. And it didn't have to be, I got an A on a test. It literally could be, I showed up and I was on time. that was the first thing, to have him have that kind of mental shift. That was great. Two is he learned that school, it was an approach of saying, I want to look at school as it was like his school career, if you will. It was kind of not just about getting a grade in a class, but it was just for the sake of the love of learning. And even if he felt that class was going to have no bearing on his future job, he's still going to learn something from that's going to help him in his life. And that was something that Cameron always was like, waste of my time. I don't know why I have to take this, like an English class. Come on, I'm an engineer. Why do I need English? But it was that shift to be like, oh, no, this is going to help you better communicate with people at work. This is going to, like all the different things. It just helps you become a better problem solver. That kind of approach now all of a sudden didn't make everything so miserable because he saw the value in things better. The third thing was his communication skills, because he would never talk to a teacher or a professor if there was something he didn't understand, was unclear. And Tasha worked so great with him on not being afraid of communicating and realizing that it was okay for him, not just okay, but it was his responsibility to say, that's what they're there for. You absolutely can go talk to them, advocate for yourself, and not just try to figure it out on your own all the time. Not that you needed it handheld, but if you're struggling, it is appropriate and okay to go and talk to the teacher about it. And he's already developed such better relationships, which made everything else after that easier, because now his teacher has a one-on-one relationship with him. So that's been huge. And then the last thing is his ability to, I think you guys call it executive functioning, but it was the ability to step back and look at a situation and not just overreact. So his quick jump to blame somebody else, or his quick jump to just give up, it's not perfect yet by all means, but he is getting so much better. He's making huge strides in taking a breath, pausing before he reacts. Or if he knows he's going to react, he kind of walks away, comes back a little bit later and says, okay, I've calmed down, let's figure out solutions. You know what I mean? Where before that wasn't even a conversation. So, when you put all those things together, I just feel like that is exactly what I was trying to get out of this for him. And while he's going to continue to build on this, it's not like this is a miracle that just, all of a sudden happened. He had to work for it and he's going to have to continue. But geez, it's so great because he's already seen such huge strides, which I'm so excited about.
Wow, Jen, I'm not gonna lie, I'm feeling some emotions here. I know how much he showed up for himself, and I know how much he put in, and I'm so thrilled. Like what you just said, the way that you just outlined that, he so deserves all of the benefits that come from that, all of the good stuff that he is going to experience because of this stronger foundation that he invested, that he built for himself. Yeah. Like he did this, it was not easy, he persevered. And it's just, I'm so thrilled for him and for you, of course. And I think that's one of my last questions. I'm cognizant of our time. But Jen, so I think you've beautifully encapsulated Cam's experience. Can you speak a bit about you as mom, in this? What was it like for you to kind of watch him be learning these new things and having this new experience? If you could just speak a little bit about that from the mom hat perspective.
Sure. Absolutely. It's been wonderful. And, part of me is like, geez, what did I do wrong that I couldn't figure this out like 10 years ago? But I realized the difference it comes from parental versus outside influences. And I think that's just what was so critical about this, because now, like, as we continue on this track, Cameron can now see me as, someone that's on his side and not just this like parent that's pressing it down, because he's learned these things that I have kind of been saying along the way, just not as maybe articulate and not in a way that was accountable. But now he sees it as kind of like, oh, okay, you're not the bad person. You're not the bad guy here. I just needed to learn it on my own, which is the biggest like it's like a double-edged sword. It's like, I have to step back as a parent and be like, it's not about me, right? This is about him and his growth. And this is what's been great. And when we do our things, like one of the, with our, TOEs, right? So we're meeting and we're kind of like, this is the ability for Cameron and I once a week to just catch up. So I'm not harping him about everything. And so we'll catch up once a week. And when we went through the parameters of what we should discuss during those weekly meetings, one of them was, Mom, don't try to solve the problems, right? Like and that was, at first it was kind of like, like, oh, what's my role now? But then it stepped back and I was like, this is great, because now that's on him. He's doing it. He's responsible for this. And now I found it's kind of like a breath of fresh air, because now it's not all on my shoulders, but I'm absolutely thrilled because this is what he needs to succeed. And I love it. I am absolutely thrilled.
That's so fantastic. So Jen, I'm hearing you really got to kind of slide into more of that ally partner position, as opposed to necessarily that I don't think it could be more succinct and to the point where you just said, Mom, don't try to solve my problems. That's very clear, very clear. Yes. Wow, Jen, that's awesome. That is so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And last but not least, question for, if there's parents out there watching this struggling, frustrated, fed up, not just at the kind of end of their rope, what advice, based on your own experience, would you give? One or two things.
Sometimes it takes a village. And in this village, I'm glad I got Como on our side because I've recommended it to, I have best friends here that their daughter is in high school and she was struggling similar things that I recognized with Cameron. And I said, hey, you really should just go check this out, because I do think it provides a service that is very time intensive in this time period, that is more than I could do when I was trying to do everything, and in a way that was objective, instead of me being kind of already had my mindset on how things should be done or whatever. So honestly, I would definitely recommend give it a chance. And I'm not saying that because, for any other reason that it just—
I'm not paying her.
Yes, exactly. There is no compensation here. I'm just saying that I think if there's any evidence you need that I think this worked, it's not only that I had Cameron in it, but that I've got Brooke and Paige in it too, right? That I've taken my other two children and said, I think you could benefit from this as well. It's just super helpful. It really, when I and Cameron were at our wits' end, this was a very good solution.
Thank you so much, Jen. That's just music to my ears. And it's so true. And if you're at the end of your rope, we are here, it's always about the student, right? Like, so Jen, all three of your kids are stepping up and they're learning how to learn. We're really lucky to be a bridge for that. So if you are listening, if you're struggling, book a call with my team. We can get you sorted out if we can help you or not. It's comoconsulting.com/get started now. Feel free to visit it. Jen, thank you so much. I'm going to be typing up a transcript of this and sharing so many gems from what you shared. I know it's going to land with so many of our families. So thank you again for taking the time. Everybody else, we will see you on our next interview. Take care and stay safe, and we'll talk soon. Bye.